bigger picture when it comes to what we as the consumers, because all of us are consumers after all, can make a sustainable difference, whether it be you using a metal straw or taking a paper bag or a reusable bag from one of the retail stores. So creating that platform and interlinking with different organizations and people and educating them sort of sometimes feels like a big challenge, but that's why we're here today, because we're having this conversation and we're asking ourselves, what can we do? What can I do as a small business owner? And also, what management can do in different influential spaces to incorporate sustainability as a whole, because we also have to be realistic at the same time to say that we cannot get rid of plastic completely, because it is sort of the backbone, ironically, of the consumer industry right now, because we use it everywhere. But what can we do as entrepreneurs? What can we do as the consumer at home who doesn't know about the environment, who doesn't necessarily have to be a tree hugger, but can actually take the power back and say, I have access to these sustainable options and I am using my consumer power to make that difference.
And each of the organizations we have on our panel today have got exactly that challenge. It's trying to find ways of how to source sustainable products, how to source and do their current business in a sustainable way. How easy or difficult is this to do, Andre? What is the landscape looking like? Is it getting better, and is it being made easier for you by entrepreneurs like Margot and so many others?
It is a challenging landscape. But it's also a very interesting landscape. If we step back a little bit, maybe in sort of a macro view, I mean, there's such interest, but especially from the investment houses in sustainability, which is something really, really positive for us, for people like me and for us. And the interesting things that's happening, especially around the digitization of sustainability. So in terms of, I'll get to the point shortly, but in terms of, for example, the lovely reports that we always publish around sustainability with beautiful pictures and all the good things that we do. What I've recently learned is, as it's AI now reading the reports, and not so much people anymore. So there's this pressure now in terms of what is technology going to do for us, and how can we start enabling that to be more sustainable, and in a way forcing all companies to also become more transparent in terms of where do they source product from, or the ingredients within products, making it easier available for us as customers to track where things comes from. And I think that will lead to even more support of small businesses, because it's so easy to then see this product came from China versus, this product was made in Bloemfontein, without there necessarily being a big price difference. Because I think also, often we do think that sustainability needs to be expensive, or it adds cost. And in some areas it does, but in many it doesn't need to be. Because as a customer, you sort of, you're very much dependent on where you shop in terms of them providing more sustainable products to you, because financially many people in our country don't have that benefit of being able to pick and choose. So the work that we've done, Woolworths has done brilliant work in this space as well, in products that you wouldn't necessarily go make a specific choice. For example, seafood. For us and Woolworths both, all the seafood we stock and sell is sustainable. There are a lot of work that's currently happening across the retailers in terms of packaging. So we've all committed to 100% recyclable or reusable packaging by 2025. So that is filtering into the stores without necessarily having a premium on them. And I think that's the ideal, that within all the categories we've got in stores, that there is more and more sustainable products without it necessarily having to have like a little green leaf and a circle, and as Margot said, a little tree that someone is hugging. That it should become so integrated in terms of what we offer to customers, that the financial commitment that a customer has to make is not a requirement to be sustainable anymore. Certainly, we're not there yet, but certainly that's the road that we as Pick n Pay is on.
Andre, thank you so much. I think I definitely have seen the transition when I go into the stores, and I can see that I've got so many more options. And I was saying to you that I'm definitely open. Do you see that a lot of customers are open to making alternative choices? Whereas before, I know that, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I used to be quite brand loyal. It just made my life easier. But now I find myself post-COVID and post my better understanding of what's happening, really making very different choices about the things that I pick off in the shelf. Is this a general trend that you see?
Yes, definitely. I mean, consumers are much more aware across all income groups, especially in obviously, as we always say, the youth, and the youth is not my age, and the world hasn't shifted yet. But again, we're seeing it in all store formats. I mean, we recently announced sort of a change in the formatting of our stores into two groups, and I think something like that also will enable us to put more specific products in specific stores that will meet that requirement. Also, in terms of having a more just country, that sustainability is not only, as we said earlier, around being green, but it's also being able to have access to food, which makes you more sustainable as a retailer. So for us, the approach generally is we're certainly aware of the consumer shift in being much more aware. But it isn't just about more green products in the stores. There are specific areas like plant-based, which is growing phenomenally. So certainly that's an area that gets focused. But for us, the challenge is to continue providing more and more sustainable products, whether that be the packaging or where they're sourced from, the transparency of what's in them across all the different store formats that we've got.
Thank you so much. And I'm a shopper, obviously, across all the stores. And I'm wondering, what is the Woolies challenge in this arena and in this space? Slightly different customer, slightly different target market. But one of the things that I know that you've done really well is in partnerships, which I'm sure is continuously changing shape and form as you go along. Is it as complex as what I think it is, to make sure that your partnerships are serving you with the same ethos around sustainability?
I think it's a bit more complex than what you think it is, to be honest. Just making fundamentally, what would externally seem as small changes, in order to get them across a supply chain, get them consistently into stores, and being able to repeatedly deliver something once you make the change, is quite a huge undertaking. And so I think that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of confusion sometimes when companies make commitments to do something, but it's not, I'm going to do it tomorrow. It's, I'm going to do it next year or in 18 months' time. And sometimes the feedback is, well, you're just saying something to look good. But it's around, how do we know where we want to be. It's now working backwards through every step in the process, whether it's working with suppliers, manufacturing process, sourcing, transporting, getting things, testing, product quality, all of that, to get from your end goal to, you almost work backwards to, okay, so how do we actually get there? And so the complexity of making changes is there. And I think that's where we talk about it needs to be embedded in your business. Because if you don't mean it, if you go out there and you start making statements that you think sound good, and this is what the market wants to hear, what consumers want to hear, unless you're really committed to it, you're never going to be able to deliver it. It's impossible, because your entire business needs to be set up in a way. You need to make changes. So we've made significant commitments over the years around our ethical sourcing. We started a supply chain transparency process. We've published our first tier supplier list for the first time in South Africa. But in order to do that, the kind of work that goes in is really complex. But it allows us to work more deeply with our supply chain, understand our supply chain better, and get our partners to understand where we want to go, and how do they make the changes requisite in their own businesses in order to be sustainable as well. Because I think part of what we need to understand is that it's not just about us doing the right thing. It's about us influencing where we can. And we can see, the consumer can see the portion that they deal with in terms of the product and the store environment and the changes we're trying to make that are consumer facing. What's not visible is what's happening behind the scenes. How do we work with transforming our suppliers? How do we work with suppliers who, if they can't transform, we support them to transform and look for new ones who are able to assist us in delivering and the kind of goals we want to, but also have the same kind of values and that are aligned with ours. So I think you touched on the key point here. It's the complexity. And I think that complexity goes to a point that we made earlier around collaboration. there's nobody's going to deliver something on their own without buying of a number of players through the value chain.
And I think there's so many lessons that other industries can learn from retail, because you are heavily reliant on collaboration, you're heavily reliant on partnerships, and you have to get those right in order to give your customers a consistent experience. It is an incredible field that I really wish we could just open up and show a lot of corporates, because corporates go about doing their business, but they're not really investing in the suppliers that are supplying into their business, and that's why we see such slow transformation. And maybe we can come back and talk about transformation in your business, because those are one of the key markers that's going to demonstrate sustainable societies going forward. It's your inclusion of women, your inclusion of small businesses. But before I come back to you, and maybe Margot, you need to weigh in on this. How easy do you feel it's been for you to navigate as an entrepreneur, getting into these complex, large corporates, having conversations, getting yourself listened to, and getting your products on the shelf?
Nelly, I'm going to be very honest with you. It has not been easy. But I find myself, knocking on all doors, because sustainability is something that people shy away from, especially in corporate. As an entrepreneur and a spokesperson for various initiatives, I would find myself chatting about sustainability and also learning along the way. And people would just shy away, saying that they're not ready yet as a corporate company. And that's respectful, and we understand that. But to hear Feroz and Andre talk about their sustainable goals and the realistic goals of how we should hold each other accountable, not only on top management level, but at a grassroots level where we can take the accountability amongst ourselves. I always say that when you see a mountain, you tackle it, and it sounds very cheesy, where you take it one step at a time, or you take it in bite sizes. So as a small business owner, I really am seeing the transformation around corporates and different companies being more open and transparent as to these are our goals. Myself as an entrepreneur and a small business owner, I need to be accountable and tell myself that these are the goals that we're going to set out for ourselves, and we cannot go back against our word. And we also need to make realistic goals for ourselves, because we know that this is something that is quite new and fresh. And that's where I think the communication from whether you're a business owner or a consumer, where you get feedback from the consumer, and you also find out what it is that you can do as a small business owner, and say that we can take hands, and collaboration. I would say collaboration is king when it comes to spreading a message and creating a story that has purpose behind it.
And I think we are led by youth that are very purpose-filled, that understand the environment, they understand the future's in their hands. They're not been given anything. You're not been given anything, Margot. A lot of people your age are gonna have to go out and create it for themselves. And this brings me back to you, Feroz, is do we see the opportunity to empower young people with knowledge, with opportunity? Do we create space for them to think around some of the challenges we have, in an organization? And I also want you, please, Feroz, to lean in for me a little bit on packaging as well. I'm interested to see whether there is opportunities there for the changes in how we utilize packaging, what kind of packaging, and are there local opportunities for people as well in that space?
Sure. So firstly, talking about the youth, I think in anything, the youth will lead the change, right? And they tend to hold us accountable more than any other generation generally. All right, so education is key, Zanele. We all need to work together to understand how to achieve our sustainability goals. But I think there's a strong appetite from our customers and from society in general to learn more. So part of our program is heavily focused on spreading sustainability messaging. So we have, for example, for our customer base, dedicated sustainability communications, which has been going on for a number of years. We have in-store communications, on-pack communications, but also part of our broader social outreach programs. So via our My School program and then we have a Woolworths education program, which has been running for many, many years, where we provide environmental and other sustainability related information to schools, which to educate children around a number of topics. We find, for example, people speak about packaging, but don't know much around how to recycle, or what does recycling mean, or where to get rid of product, and so on. And so we try to to educate on various levels. It goes from the most basic to complex issues around, human rights in supply chains and so on. And the issues behind them are very complex. So education and getting the message out is very important. Around packaging specifically, I think there's just so much happening right now. We appreciate the importance of being a bit more deliberate in our packaging choices. We've been working on packaging going back at least 12 to 15 years around significant changes. Most recently, we've made more external commitments. We've partnered with industry forums. Andre mentioned some earlier. What we're finding also is a broader evolution within the country. So we're now moving into a new era, for example, with something known as EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, which is for the first time being legislated in South Africa. So it's not a new concept globally, but it's the first time that South Africa has had a legislated EPR regime, which means that as producers, you've got to be involved in the full life cycle of the packaging that you put out. It means we need to work collaboratively with other organizations, with the broad industry packaging manufacturers, organizations known as PROs, producer responsibility organizations, recycling agencies, collection agencies, and so on, in order to create the correct infrastructure so that more packaging is collected, is separated, is recycled, is brought back into the packaging environment so that we can use more recycled content in our packaging. Try to be almost close the loop, as they say, as far as possible. And so the evolution in that space is certainly happening. It's moving faster than it has historically. What we're finding now is that there's more players involved, more organizations who historically might not have been more as aware of the commitments in the space or the obligations are now getting involved. So I'm quite satisfied that the direction of travel is the right one. I think the pace of change is picking up certainly, and I think as specifically the EPR regime starts settling down in South Africa, I think we'll see more visible change, which as consumers I think can only benefit us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Feroz. I definitely watch every single product I buy, and I do appreciate every time you make a difference in your organization around packaging and how, what you put across. I experience it and I'm so aware, but I've also just thought to myself that as consumers, we need to do better to collect and educate ourselves. And thank you for sharing all that information on what you actually do. But all of us have got to go find a way to gain access to this content. Each and every citizen is responsible for it. And, Andre, coming through to you, I know that your organization, Pick n Pay, really has done over the years huge work in terms of its foundation, being able to support communities and societies during the disasters, really being able to bring together a whole lot of players. I think it's commendable work. You are doing it, Woolworths is doing it, SPAR is doing it. Everybody's doing that little bit. Collectively, we're probably doing a lot, but somehow something tells me that we're still moving way too slow as a country to mitigate some of the things that are happening due to environmental challenges. Are we doing enough to adapt and to create deep adaptation in the system, especially along the value chain, along supply chains? Do you feel the way that I do, or do you feel that we on track? And if we're not on track, if we're not going fast enough, what can really put fuel behind our efforts collectively?
No, I agree with you. We're definitely not moving at the pace we should. The support from government in areas like Feroz was saying in terms of EPR is really, really important. Because not all businesses, unfortunately, are necessarily interested in changing society to the way that it should, or the optimal way that society could function. So certainly that input from government that is legislating things is a big impetus for businesses now to change. For businesses like Pick n Pay, Woolworths that have it ingrained in the core of our businesses, the pace is still too slow because there's so much to get done. Not only in terms of the products, but also in terms of the social ills and the social challenges that we've got in our country in terms of basic things like food security, in terms of people not having access to food. So in that space, collaboration in terms of making sure that at the same time as we're reducing our food waste, that food actually gets to people that are in need. In terms of the educational system, similar to Woolworths, we've got the Pick n Pay School Club that also supports thousands of schools. And the wish really would be that all businesses step up before they are forced to do so. Because it's always better to manage your business yourself than having it legislated. But unfortunately, if it doesn't happen, that's the way we will end up. And legislation, even though it's positive, as I've said, it also slows things down because it becomes very restrictive, and innovation doesn't have the space that it should necessarily. And businesses like Margo, they can't wait for things like that to change. We need that kind of product in our stores now. So a lot of focus for us in terms of this change is supporting small businesses. We spend roughly around over 4 billion rand a year with small businesses. And the challenging area, I think, for small businesses that we're trying to address is someone has got a great idea, but it's really difficult to fit into this big machine without mentoring or without knowing who to go speak to, or if you love the product but you don't have the knowledge around packaging, for example. So I think, with many of the retailers, there are mentoring programs that started, but again, it's if someone is in some far away little town, it's access for them that's still lacking. So certainly, no, there's a huge amount of work that's still outstanding. Whether it be on issues like climate change, Feroz and I we're just humoring around the talks around level 6 from Eskom, and all those things impact on your carbon footprint, as Feroz was saying earlier. So it is a really challenging environment for businesses to run in, but it is really that's what spurs innovation, and that's what brings change. So maybe what I'll end is in terms of, you refer to the work that the foundation has done, for example. So through Feed the Nation Foundation, it's more than 37 million meals that's now been distributed since the start of COVID. But also in terms of that, it's not a sustainable model in terms of just doing handouts. It's commercially, it's a very challenging position to be in, but also it's disrespectful in a way for people to continually receive handouts. So the innovation there is, again, through a small business that's now supplying seed packs. When we donate food to people, that we're starting to give a home garden or a community garden seed packs with that. So I'm really happy Margo is with us. We can learn a lot from her, and many of the other thousands of small businesses that still want to join in making the country more sustainable, not only on having more green products, because that's not what's going to put South Africa in the lead like it should be.
And this slow cog of a machine, and thank you for your contribution. Thank you for painting the broader picture. We definitely have to find a way to make change embedded in society and community. And I was actually going to say to you that I think we need a lot more political will as well. We need a lot more transparency around the challenges in our environment and why they came about, and how do we really do a change at a political leadership level, as well as all organizations at a senior level. I have the joy of speaking to really great and working with really great organizations in the space, but I also know that it's not all of us, and if we all did it, we'd see a changing society. So thank you for that synopsis as well. But when I think of Margo, I'm going to come to you. A lot of young people who are starting businesses fall by the wayside because everything moves so slow. The impetus and everything that's required to make them thrive. And then there's the capital issue. And I won't speak on your behalf, Margo, but do we have a problem when it comes to investing in people who are taking these journeys and allowing them to fail along the way, to pick themselves up, to do this again? How are you being supported along this, or are you supposed to be supporting yourself, out of, your community, or, so speak to me about the difficulties financially to keep going.
Sure, Sonele. I don't even know where to start, but I find myself always, like I mentioned before, knocking on all the doors and making sure that your no is the next opportunity to continue to share your story, share your concept. For example, to be honest, my small business is self-funded because I have different portfolios, but it's not really sustainable, ironically, because you have to have support when you collaborate with small businesses and organizations that really latch onto that. It makes it more easier for you to share that story and for you to be more effective in distributing your product. But I think also in terms of education, I think, Feroz, you mentioned it, that the consumer as a whole, myself included, needs to be educated, and also, the lack of access to information for the youth, for example, is still quite a big challenge. I find myself also saying that I am quite optimistic, and there's many more of us. There's thousands, hundreds and thousands of us going into this space and trying to sort of create that foundation of sustainability, and it is quite tough. But I think education, if you have access to the internet and find yourself in spaces like these, which I find myself in, is just to continually knock on the doors, and also ask for feedback when someone says no to your business plan, or how can you improve on how I can make the business plan sustainable, or have a more sustainable business strategy, and tweak on that and continue. I mean, I know for a fact that I'm 30, and I know that I've been in the entrepreneurial space for about 6 years already, and I'm learning every single day as I go forward. So the fact that there are those financial challenges, I mean, we are still in a pandemic. We've been in this pandemic for about 2 years now. I've even lost count. But there's also so many spaces that have become so much smaller because we are in the digital space. So as much as there are challenges, I think there's also many more opportunities that one can have. But that lack of access to information sometimes does become a big challenge.
And I can imagine in South Africa, lack of information is a big challenge. And here we are on a platform that's looking at Pan-Africa, the whole continent. We have a major challenge to really help Africans to survive, the next decade and into the next decade. I do believe, though, that we have some stories to tell that are world class to the rest of the world. We in Africa have done the most incredible innovations, be it in the finance space, be it in renewable energy. What do you think is our role going forward in the retail space, not only in South Africa, but in the continent? Feroz, I'll come to you. Maybe you can also make it your closing statement. I think this alludes a little bit to the education you were speaking about earlier, but is there anything else that you believe is the flag we should hold up, the thing that we should drive from a retail perspective, from a business perspective, in order to shape the Africa that we want to see and the one that we will showcase to the rest of the world?
Sure. I mean, that's a really good question. I think maybe as a starting point is for us to believe more in ourselves, because I think as South Africans, we probably sometimes have a bit of an inferiority complex, but we'd be surprised just how well we perform in this space. And I can speak for corporate South Africa, from my experience within corporate South Africa, is when we go out to conferences or we talk to external companies, I've yet to come across any field where we are second best. In the sustainability space, in many areas, we are amongst the best in class globally. I think we pioneered integrated reporting, for example, in South Africa. Our initial integrated reporting guidelines formed the basis of the International Integrated Reporting Commission's work a number of years ago. You can look at our, the work we're doing in sourcing, in using technology to bridge the digital divide. In the retailing space, a lot of what we're doing around ethical sourcing and that kind of thing is amongst best in class globally. So I think the first thing is, let's believe a bit more in ourselves. I think we shouldn't have that inferiority complex. The second thing is, when we working with our colleagues in the rest of Africa, is to understand the opportunity for us to learn and share mutually. I think there's so much learning we can get from others, and where we can share to each other. So I think if we just go in there with open mind, and there's one is, I mentioned, don't have an inferiority complex. At the same time, I think we can balance that with being humble at the same time, right? And saying there's huge opportunity for us to learn as well. And I think the kind of solutions we can generate within South Africa and the broader African continent, understanding that Africa is made up of 54 countries with each one unique. The kind of solutions that we can come up with collectively are certainly the kind of things that we need to be looking for, because I think we can teach the rest of the world. So I think it's very exciting.
Thank you so much. There's another organization that I did something similar for last week, and they called it Humble Ambition, an extremely ambitious bottling company across the continent. And they have that motto: we need to be ambitious, we need to be humble about it. And definitely the collaboration and the sharing is quite key. Very tricky, again, landscape from a retail point of view, because South Africa is not homogenous. It's so different across the landscape, but glad to hear that you're doing the great work locally and really helping to change mindset. So thank you so much, Feroz. I'm going to be searching for some of the stuff you talked about. Andre, over to you. I think you have exactly the same question on my part. It's how do we create, what is the one thing that we'd lift up and say, or even two or three, this is what we're doing really well. This is what we want to do more of. And this is what we need to be committed to, perhaps.
I think, the core of what we do is essentially in three areas. So the first one is food, that we spoke out a lot. And certainly for us, in terms of empowering new and small suppliers into the business, that's a key focus for us that continues. In terms of the environment, it's reducing environmental impacts, whether it be carbon, waste, a range of those impacts. And I think then the third component for Pick n Pay is all around supporting communities and employees, which links back to the education. And I think that's for us the biggest thing to keep working on, because the infrastructure in schools are so challenged. By supporting education, if we look at the history of our country, it is the youth that has shifted our country time and time again, whether it be political, for so many things. I think the youth, as we all said earlier, are key in creating the shift. And where you approach that as a business because of your values, or where you do it in a clinical way just because you think, well, I want an educated workforce because they're good for my good, it's a good thing for my business. I think that's where many more corporates should be putting their funding. And then the last thing, perhaps more on a personal base, is just, we need to remind people of what our values are as people living in Africa, that we do stuff together, that we don't do things to each other, we do it with each other. And if we can start bringing that through in our businesses and in our schools and in our relationships, what an awesome country to live in with amazing people. We just sometimes, forget actually who we are.
Absolutely. I definitely walk away feeling quite renewed about the continent and who we are. And you're right. What does the saying say? I am because you are because I am. And when we can think like that, and infuse that in our businesses, it's key. I agree with you as well. We are also a country that was based on really good education, and we're really still chipping away and ensuring that everybody's educated, everybody's literate. But I definitely think if corporates could also contribute to the enabling of young people in things that are useful for them to earn a living and to find their way, in our future, it definitely would change the landscape. It would change society. It would make us more sustainable and a safer society going forward. So thank you for your closing words. And I really wish you all the luck. We're watching out for everything that you do. We're so proud of the responsible strategies that you've put into place. And if I can close off with the perspective again of young people, Margot, Margot, when you started your business, you were solving something for yourself and you solved for others. How do you feel is the level of commitment, motivation, and hope that's held by young people? Do we still have you on board on this journey, for the couple of decades to come?
Absolutely. I think when we talk about, respecting the environment and being sustainable, from retail to clothing to supply chain to produce, I think it's so important to remind ourselves that as people, we take the power and we have that responsibility. We don't have to wait for big organizations to make that change. We can influence them, and as much as they are also influencing the space, it is a partnership after all when it comes to being sustainable and creating that value within the community that you come from. I come from a very small community, and to see the change that you can create with something small and creating that domino effect still has a big impact as you being in a big organization. So going back to basics would be my closing remark. We tend to look at things always in a bigger picture, but also applying the pressure and continuing to create that message, that green message of sustainability across all sectors in everyday life and every choice that you make. I don't think as South Africans or as the world, we have it all figured out when it comes to sustainability and respecting each and every single component, but we can start, and that's exactly what we are doing.
Incredible. Thank you so much for closing us off on that message. We all have, I suppose, a journey ahead of us, but we also have great commitment to what we are doing. And I really appreciate your time and sharing that. Margot, I loved what you said around, leading by example. It's amazing how much you can change in the world if you change and start with yourself, and then others are watching, and it creates a domino effect and you make an impact in other people's lives. So thank you so much. I think from my side, I'm really thrilled at the conversation. Again, wishing you all the luck, and I hope to see you again in the future.
The World Economic Forum has identified extreme weather, climate action failure, and human-led environmental damage among the highest risks for humanity and our planet over the next decade. As a financial services intermediary, we recognize climate change as a systemic risk which must be integrated into the way in which we do business. We're a custodian of the lifetime savings and investments of millions of customers across Africa. Old Mutual, doing business and doing good.
Well, that's it. Can you believe it? Thank you to the panel. Very insightful, informative. I loved it. And thank you to everybody who participated. We have been tracking everybody who's been engaging and participating, and it's time for us to hand out the prizes. Firstly, our Spec Boom winners, those who were really busy here in the Hop and Event platform. That's Gando Stange, Johan van Heerden, Clint Hill, Malichodi Amos Mokapudi, Francesca van der Berg, Mapula Laselane, Sanele Ulu, and Tom Chevalier for the special message he sends to us to say thank you. We want to say to you, thank you so much for your kind words, but congratulations to all of you. And our Hope and Engagement champion is, and they get the 1,000 Rand Sealand voucher. It is congratulations to Kwezi Gyasi. And those who, congratulations. And those that kept us trending on Twitter, thank you. It was Utando Lwabo at Tafti, Alex TM at Alex Sitole, Kajo M at Kajo M, Mapula at Rain Queen. Your Spec Boems will also be on their way soon. And our most engaged tweeter receiving the voucher of 2,000 Rand, the Sealand voucher, congratulations. It goes to at Moila Teresa V. Thank you, Teresa, for your engagements and thoughts throughout the conference. Then there's the tea with legendary Jenna Clifford. Congratulations to Arne Bressler and Jonathan Lemming. Finally, the lucky and deserving winner of the Boshendal Weekend Away. We have to all give a round of applause to Spelele Vilagazi. Congratulations and thank you to all of you. Thank you for staying engaged. Thank you for staying with us. Of course, we have to thank all our sponsors. The next Old Mutual Future of Sustainability Conference will be hosted on the 21st to the 22nd of June in 2023. We have reached the end of our day. A massive thank you again to Old Mutual Limited for bringing this event to life as the Platinum Partner. And a massive thank you to our gold sponsor, APSA. Our silver sponsors, Umgeni Water, PwC, Exaro, Vodacom, and our bronze sponsors, EAS, Engine, Brand SA, and Nemesis Accounting. We're grateful. It was overwhelming, your support. We're grateful to all the panelists. Thank you for your time, your patience, your insights, and valuable knowledge. I am Zanele Morrison. It has been my absolute honor and pleasure. Do take care.
The World Economic Forum has identified extreme weather, climate action failure, and human-led environmental damage among the highest risks for humanity and our planet over the next decade. As a financial services intermediary, we recognize climate change as a systemic risk which must be integrated into the way in which we do business. We're a custodian of the lifetime savings and investments of millions of customers across Africa. Old Mutual, doing business and doing good.
Is your company embarking on the ESG journey and overwhelmed by the large number of metrics and scrutiny from internal and external parties? Everybody knows that understanding and managing ESG disclosure is a fundamental part of corporate reporting and risk management. The current information is scattered, compiled by different colleagues, and stored in a myriad of spreadsheets which are prone to errors and inconsistencies. Meet Ethica, a digital solution that enables organizations to acquire information, consolidate, and report all in one place. Why Ethica? Ethica is a bespoke solution that meets any number of metrics. Ethica is real-time and can accommodate as many entities as you like with dynamic reporting. Ethica allows managers to easily identify issues in workflow and incomplete sections. Ethica is affordable. Ethica, reliable, transparent ESG reporting.
The future is built on what we do in the present. Over the past 5 years, our people at Exxaro have taken the power in their hands. Those choices have led us to this point, where we celebrate the power of 5. Each finger on a hand has its own appearance, function, and purpose. When they all work together and tap into the power of the 5 fingers, what the hand can achieve becomes limitless. That is Exxaro. We empower our people and our communities. We work together with government and other key partners. We are actively contributing to a cleaner world. All these together culminate in the power of 5 and a future of powering possibility. we recommit ourselves to our purpose of powering better lives in Africa and beyond, driven by our vision of resources powering a clean world. This recommitment is driven by our sustainable growth and impact strategy. The Exxaro winning culture guides us on this journey, and each day we ensure we remain fatality-free. Cultivating our relationships with communities and stakeholders is critical to addressing our country's socio-economic challenges, and a reduced carbon footprint contributes to powering better lives for future generations. Exxaro's sustainable growth and impact strategy will guide us to achieve our business vision of resources powering a clean world. This business strategy has shifted to position sustainability at the heart of the business, driven by the 5 strategic objectives: to transition at speed and scale, to empower our people to create impact, to make our minerals and energy business thrive, to become a catalyst for economic growth and environmental stewardship, to be carbon neutral by 2050. While we celebrate and acknowledge the many awards we have received over the past 5 years, we can never let our guard down. We are the driving force as we continue to embrace our culture, our vision, and remind ourselves of both what we have already accomplished and the ambition that lies ahead. Each one of us holds the power in our hands. The power of 5. And a future of powering possibility.
We invite you to a place in Africa that is like no other, where new ways of doing business happen every day, where the world watches our talent in fascination. South Africa's rich in gold, diamonds, and manufacturing expertise. We embrace global innovation and technology trends. A winning country where all dreams are valid and realized, where we always come together and build a better future and country. Come invest with us. Believe in South Africa. South Africa, inspiring new ways.
Growing your business in Africa takes a financial specialist with over 150 years of Pan-African experience, a leading corporate and investment bank with a presence in 12 African countries and global offices in London and New York. It takes a deep understanding of investment flows, market participants, sector trends, and regulations on the continent. It takes Absa CIB, your financial specialist in Africa. The bravery to imagine and the will to get things done. That's Africanacity.
We're taught that 1 + 1 = 2. Simple, right? But today's world isn't simple. So what happens if we look at it from a new angle? Could we make something greater? If we bring together human ingenuity, passion, and experience with the latest technology, we start to make something more, building trust for today and tomorrow. Because when a passionate community of solvers comes together, you get new solutions for a new day. That's the new equation.
The World Economic Forum has identified extreme weather, climate action failure, and human-led environmental damage among the highest risks for humanity and our planet over the next decade. As a financial services intermediary, we recognize climate change as a systemic risk which must be integrated into the way in which we do business. We're a custodian of the lifetime savings and investments of millions of customers across Africa. Old Mutual, doing business and doing good.
Umgeni Water, a state-owned entity, is one of Africa's most successful organizations involved in water management and is the largest supplier of bulk potable water in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Raw water is normally gravity-fed from a dam or river to the water treatment plant, waterworks. As the raw water enters the plant, it is tested to determine the quality of the water before the treatment process can start. Chemicals are added to the raw water to remove the dirt or pollutants. Once the chemicals have been added, water passes through flash mixers for even mixing of all the chemicals. The following chemicals are used. Chlorine is used as a disinfecting agent to kill off harmful bacteria and viruses. Polymeric coagulant, generally polyaluminium chloride, helps bring the small dirt particles together to form floc. Lime acts as a stabilizing agent and controls pH levels. Bentonite is added only sometimes to increase turbidity levels for better flocculation. The water then flows into large settling tanks. Here, the coagulant helps to bring the small dirt particles in the water together. It works like a magnet to form lumps known as floc. Floc sink to the bottom of the tanks to form a sludge blanket. As the floc settle, the cleaner water on the surface flows to the sand filters. A special clean sand in the filters traps or removes the smaller dirt particles as the water filters through it. After filtration, chlorine is added to prevent the growth of bacteria and other harmful microorganisms post-chlorination. Water samples of the treated water are routinely collected for testing in the laboratory during and at the end of the purification process. This is to ensure that the treated water is of excellent quality and safe to drink. The treated water, now safe to drink, is piped to the reservoir for storage. From the reservoir, the treated water is piped to the municipalities before it can be distributed out to us to use.